isn't the reason that you're sharing this in the first place because you're seeking external validation. Because if you didn't need the external validation, you would have just done what needed to be done and moved on, right? Alright, so last week I talked about external validation and how I accidentally fell victim to the need for it. But this week I kind of wanted to talk about other people and external validation. Because now that I've called myself out, I have to reconsider how I think about other people's need for it. And I have to reconsider how I think about some of the more blatant things that people do for external validation. Alright, so like I mentioned before, my social media of choice is Reddit. And on my homepage, I have some quote-unquote wholesome subreddits. You know, I got r/animals being bros, which is exactly what it sounds like. Just videos and clips of animals being the ultimate homies. I also got r/eye bleach, which on the other hand is not what it sounds like. Alright, this isn't a place where people are dumping toxic chemicals into their eyes. This subreddit can accurately be described as just cuteness overload. Alright, so I've got some wholesome subreddits that I frequent, but I wanted to talk about two in particular. And those are the humans being bros and the made me smile subreddits. Because when I joined these subreddits, I just assumed that these were places where you could post pics, clips, and stories of other people either exhibiting bro-like behavior or doing something that made you smile. And so inherently I thought that that meant that this wasn't really a place where you post pics, clips, or stories of yourself. I mean, the subreddit description for humans being bros is a place for sharing videos, gifs, and images of people being total bros. And again, I took that to mean other people. So for example, if I saw instances of people being total bros on the internet or in real life, I would post it here. But I would never post myself being a bro to this subreddit. And the subreddit description on Made Me Smile is a place to share things that made you smile or brightened up your day, a generally uplifting subreddit. And again, I took that to mean that this was a place for sharing content from other people that made you smile. But I would never think to post something that I did to this subreddit because that carries an entirely different connotation, right? I mean, that seems to suggest, hey, this thing that I did will make you smile. And that just feels super presumptive. But even if that doesn't carry a different connotation, I still just feel weird whenever I see somebody posting themselves to these wholesome subreddits. But to be fair, the majority of posts on these subs are as the descriptions intend. Most of the posts are of other people either exhibiting bro-type behavior or doing something that made the person who posted smile. But there are a decent amount of the other type of posts as well, of people posting themselves on these subreddits. And whenever I see that, I immediately start thinking, okay, what was your reason for posting this? Because I mean, it's one thing for you to do a good deed, but it is another thing entirely to film yourself doing that good deed and then to post it publicly, or to do it and then write a quirky little summary about your good deed and then tell everyone you know about it, completely unprompted. I mean, at that point, isn't it fair to question what the motivations were behind your good deed? I mean, did you do it because you thought it was genuinely the right thing to do? Or did you do it because you wanted to tell people that you did a good thing? Isn't the reason that you're sharing this in the first place because you're seeking external validation? Because if you didn't need the external validation, you would have just done what needed to be done and moved on, right? It would have been enough to just know that you did the right thing. And so these are the thoughts and questions that go through my head whenever I see someone posting themselves on one of these wholesome subreddits. I just can't shake the underlying feeling that in its simplest form, what they're saying by posting themselves is, look at how good of a person I am. And the unfortunate reality is that that changes my whole perception of this good deed that I'm looking at. But as I said in the beginning, I have to reconsider how I perceive and react to other people's need for external validation. Because as I outlined in the video I made last week, I have also fallen victim to that need. And that is despite my cautious awareness of it and my determination not to succumb to it. And also despite the fact that in my personal life, I am not suffering from a lack of external validation. As I've mentioned before, I am currently coming out of a 10-year period of severe depression and isolation. And so many of the small, basic, regular things that I do are now met with approval from my close friends and family. A couple of weeks ago, I made a video while I was sick, and I got praise for that. Most people don't get praise for working while they're sick. That's just expected of them. They don't get a pat on the back for that. But I got a pat on the back for that. And what's funny is that my sister was in the room while I was receiving this praise, and a couple of weeks before this, my sister had literally defended her thesis while she had COVID, just to give you an idea of how regular and unimpressive what I had accomplished was. And yet, despite the unremarkable nature of my accomplishment, I still got props for it. And so when you put those things together, the constant validation that I get from the people around me, and the fact that I am extremely wary of external validation and do my best not to fall into its traps, you'd think that I would never feel the need to seek it out. And yet, I did. And as I outlined in the previous video, I didn't even realize I was doing it. I'd basically hidden my motivation for validation behind other pure motivations. Again, what had happened was that I had made a couple of comments that had gotten more likes and responses than I'm used to, and so I subconsciously started commenting more and making similar comments to the ones that had generated that response. And I told myself that the reason I was commenting more was because I needed to get out of the mindset that I'd been in for the past 10 years, where I was constantly lurking and hiding from all types of interaction, both digitally and in real life. And I needed to relearn how to express and articulate myself so that I could more competently convey my thoughts, feelings, and opinions. And all of that is true, and I do need to do that. But that motivation doesn't explain the drastic increase in my commenting frequency and why my new comments were so similar to the ones that had gotten a ton of likes. And so looking back, I realized that I had made some of these comments simply because I was chasing likes. I wanted the validation. Plain and simple. And that was only clear to me in hindsight. I didn't even realize I was doing it while I was doing it. And so as I see these people posting themselves to these wholesome subreddits, I realize that there are a few things that I now have to consider. I have to consider the fact that they may not live in similar circumstances to mine where they are constantly receiving validation. I have to consider the possibility that they perform good deeds every single day without getting any of the positive reinforcement that I get whenever I do something basic. I also have to consider the possibility that, like me, they may not even realize they're doing it. I mean, they're probably seeing a lot of people on social media doing basically nothing and getting heaps of praise for it. So why wouldn't they feel like they could get a little bit of that validation from actually putting some good into the world? And so with all of those considerations, it becomes a little bit easier to understand why some people may feel the need to post themselves to these wholesome subreddits, or to Instagram, or to TikTok, or to Facebook, seeking external validation. I mean, some posts on the Made Me Smile subreddit are literally just people posting a picture of themselves with a story. Now, before I would think, okay, one, that's not the purpose of this sub, and two, you're doing this for external validation. Alright, you came to a wholesome subreddit to post a picture of yourself because you could guarantee positive feedback. You basically took the path of least resistance to get your external validation fix. And I know, extremely cynical thought process, right? But now I'm trying to create a habit of thinking, okay, sure, that may not be the purpose of this sub, but if I take you at your word, you did accomplish something impressive, and you deserve some type of validation for that accomplishment. And it's possible that in your personal life, there are no avenues for you to get that validation. I mean, some of these accomplishments are extremely consequential. I mean, you have people posting about how they've been sober for hundreds or thousands of days. I mean, imagine doing something that difficult and getting absolutely no positive reinforcement for it. At that point, it becomes understandable that some people may start to relapse because, yeah, you're working so hard and getting nothing for it. So if posting your accomplishments and getting a bunch of upvotes and positive feedback helps you to stay sober, bruh, keep posting. I won't hold you. But also, side note, be careful, all right? Use it as an aid and not a crutch. Don't let the only thing keeping you from relapsing be the amount of likes that you get on a subreddit. And so yeah, that's kind of the thought process that I'm trying to establish for myself. But don't get me wrong, a lot of this is practiced. Unfortunately, my knee-jerk reaction is still to be cynical. And that's just because I have been for at least the past 10 years. But now I'm starting to think that I would rather get duped by someone who made up a sad story and used that to post either a picture of themselves or a story of them doing a good deed for external validation than condemn someone who genuinely accomplished what they said they did and just needed a bit of positive reinforcement to keep going. It's kind of like that saying that always comes up when people talk about capital punishment. You know, it's better to spare the lives of 100 guilty people than to condemn one innocent person to death. I know that is a sharp escalation of what I'm talking about, but the thought process is still the same. So yeah, that's just kind of how I'm trying to reshape how I view people who seek external validation after I myself succumbed to it for, quite frankly, less noble reasons. Again, these people are posting wholesome content of things that they did or accomplished. And so regardless of their motivations, they still put some good into the world. I, on the other hand, tried to make a funny comment and failed. And on a larger scale, this is just indicative of a larger pattern that I've come across. That a lot of times when I see people doing something that I dislike or disagree with, I often find that in some way, shape, or form, I do the same thing. But that's actually a pretty good idea for another video, so I'm gonna save that whole concept for later and end this one here. So if you made it this far, thanks for sticking with it. I hope it made sense, and I really appreciate you watching. All in all, it just comes back to something that I have talked about 3 times now and will continue to talk about: truth and empathy. I just have to understand that everybody has very different backgrounds and circumstances from me that would motivate them to do things that I don't think I ever would. I mean, yeah, the motivations are the same. We're both seeking external validation, but my need for it manifested in me making comments about things that I like and care about, and their need for it manifested in them posting pictures and videos of them doing good deeds. Now, to this day, I've never done that, and I don't think I ever would, but that doesn't mean that we didn't have the same motivation. And so because of that, I can't sit here and condemn their behavior, because we sought the same thing. They just manifested differently because of our different backgrounds and exposures and circumstances. And so yeah, ultimately, I think I just constantly need to be aware of that. But anyway, before I go off for another 20 minutes about that, again, let's just end this here. So again, thank you for watching, and thank you for indulging me. And with that said, I wish you all the very best going forward. Take care of yourself, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.